Next in the broadcast, the U.S. Federal Reserve ends its 6-year-long bond buying program to stimulate the economy, but says it's keeping their rates near zero for the time being. With Korea's ruling party chief warning that the economy may be slipping into recession, the opposition party leader also agrees on putting top priority on the economy, but the two don't see eye to eye on whether to restrict or expand policies to boost household income. Though the high-level inter-Korean talks scheduled for this week never materialized, there is still hope that the two Koreas will talk things out before the end of the year, according to the experts. Primetime News begins now. Hello and welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News live from Seoul. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with the widely expected move by the U.S. Federal Reserve to end its 6-year-long bond buying program.
Interest rates, however, will still remain near zero for the time being. Our Kim Min-ji reports on the rationale and the impact of the fiscal policy.
It's official. The Federal Reserve has called time on the quantitative easing stimulus program it started in 2008 during the global financial crisis. The widely expected decision came at the end of a 2-day meeting of the Federal Open Market Committee in Washington. In a statement released Wednesday, the Fed said there has been a substantial improvement in the outlook for the labor market and the broader economy has grown stronger. The Fed also expressed confidence that gradual economic recovery in the U.S. will continue despite a global economic slowdown. With the focus on achieving maximum employment, the U.S. central bank said it will maintain the 0 to 0.25% target range for interest rates for what it called a considerable time. It added that a rate hike could take place if the committee sees progress towards its employment and inflation objectives. However, experts point out that uncertainties will linger because of the vagueness in the term used by the Fed.
Perhaps until the December meeting, we are going to see this enhanced volatility because now there's going to be speculation about what are they going to change the considerable time language to. Once they give us a little bit more guidance and specificity with that, it could actually tamp down some of the market volatility because there will be less guesswork involved.
At its highest point, the central bank was pumping $85 billion a month into the financial system. It started cutting back on the program in increments last year as the economy steadily picked up. Since the program's introduction, the Fed has made more than $4 trillion in bond purchases. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Corporate Korea didn't do so well in the first half of this year. Sales numbers of 1,700 companies surveyed by the Bank of Korea dropped for the first time since 2009, right after the global financial crisis. The biggest drop came from the electronics and the shipbuilding sectors. And a good case in point is Samsung Electronics. It's disappointed the market with a big slump in earnings from its mobile division in the third quarter, taking a hit from Apple's new iPhones and Chinese smartphone makers. Samsung says it's adopting changes in its smartphone lineup. Shin Se-min reports.
Samsung Electronics come out with a damage report from its slowing mobile business. According to its final earnings report from Thursday, its third quarter profits came in at $4.4 billion, down 60% from a year earlier. It's also the lowest quarterly profit since the second quarter of 2012. The mobile sector led the losses. Its reported operating profits of $1.6 billion, a dramatic drop from the over $6 billion in the same period last year. Analysts estimate shipments of some 80 million handset devices in the third quarter, a drop from the over 88 million a year before. The decline is indicative of the diminishing popularity of Samsung's flagship smartphones. Industry watchers say a combination of Apple's new iPhone launch and more affordable smartphones from its Chinese competitors is taking away Samsung's mobile business. And its domestic rival LG Electronics, number 3 player in the field, is also threatening Samsung on the back of its flagship G3 smartphone. Looking ahead to the fourth quarter, though, Samsung says its performance will likely improve thanks to year-end shopping season. And moving forward further to next year, the tech giant says it's focusing on product differentiation through flexible displays and metal frames while streamlining its strategic models to enhance cost competitiveness. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And staying on the earnings front, quite a different story for Korea's Google Naver. It's posted an operating profit of around $180 million in the third quarter, up almost 90% on year. The solid growth momentum comes despite a drop in local sales as the company's mobile messenger line has made a successful global launch. That pushed up overseas sales by over 50% to around $220 million, accounting for 1/3 of Naver's total sales.
President Park again pushed economic revitalization plans during her speech in front of the National Assembly this week. And the World Bank recently ranked Korea's business environment the 5th in the world. So how does all this encouragement look like in real action? Well, we're in the middle of Foreign Investment Week here in Korea, and our Song Ji-sun reports on how the doors have opened to investors from around the world.
If you're interested in investing in Korea, this week may be a good time to start as Korea's Trade Ministry is holding its annual Foreign Investment Week. Over 300 foreign investors from 22 different countries are visiting this country for this occasion, including investment chiefs of global companies like Boeing and General Electric. Nearly $60 million worth of contracts were signed on the first day of this year's Foreign Investment Week alone. Visitors were also introduced to prospective sectors that could benefit upon implementation of Korea's free trade deal with China and shown ways to incorporate Korea's advanced IT technologies into their businesses.
My focus is in the startup companies, high-tech startup companies. And if you take a look at a lot of the ideas and that are emerging from the Korean market, it's just incredibly amazing to see what the younger generation is starting to develop. The market's huge, and they're looking at opportunities going globally.
Seoul's Trade Ministry also hosted its annual Foreign Company Day event at COEX on Thursday, acknowledging the contributions of foreign companies to Korea's economic growth. Foreign direct investment accounts for 14% of the nation's GDP, with some 15,000 foreign companies recording sales of $1 billion. Minister Yoon Sang-jik reiterated the government's push to cater to foreign investors.
The Korean government aims to attract the regional headquarters and research and development centers of multinational companies. We will lift excessive regulations across all ministries to facilitate foreign direct investment.
At this year's event, Corning received the most prestigious Gold Tower Order of Industrial Service Merit for investing an accumulated $2.5 billion and creating jobs for over 3,000 employees, while at the same time helping Korea earn its reputation as the world's leading display maker. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye has vowed to foster Korea's defense industry as a central part of her vision of a creative economy that converges IT with other sectors for economic growth. At a ceremony marking the deployment of Korea's homegrown FA-50 fighter jet, she said the combat plane is a good example of that, expected to create some 27,000 jobs and have a ripple effect of $7 billion. The president also added that the fighter jets will help the Korean military enhance its operational capabilities. The FA-50 is capable of carrying up to 4.5 tons of precision-guided missiles and launching strikes under the cover of darkness thanks to its night vision imaging systems. The leaders of rival parties here in Korea have also agreed that the domestic economy is at a crucial point, one that will decide whether the pace of recovery speeds up or falls into recession. But they have different ideas on how to implement growth policies. Our Kim Young-gil has more.
Speaking before a full assembly, the chairman of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sung, said Korea's economy was slipping into recession.
South Korea's economic growth rate for each quarter has been below the 1% level, which signals that the economy is not recovering. The economy expanded just 0.9% in the third quarter.
Kim proposed a three-headed attack to address the problems head-on. He called on labor, management, and the government to work together to restrain wage increases, to endorse flexibility in the labor market, and to reform pension programs. The ruling party leader also called for deregulation and promoting the service industry to create new jobs and find new growth engines. However, the interim leader of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy took a different tack.
The world is implementing policies to reduce government debt and stimulate consumer-based growth. At first, consumer-based growth was the government's first priority, but now the main focus is on expanding investment.
Moon said fueling growth means increasing household earnings that can lead to more consumer spending. He opposed giving tax breaks for conglomerates, saying they only hold on to their cash reserves, which cuts the money flow to households and in turn weakens consumption. While both party leaders differ on the details, they do agree that the domestic economy is reaching a crossroads that will determine whether it makes a leap forward or falls into recession. Regarding North Korean affairs, the interim chief of the opposition stressed the need for dialogue and called for lifting sanctions on the North, claiming it was the biggest obstacle to improving inter-Korean ties. The ruling party chief made no mention of North Korean matters in his speech. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
The Seoul Defense Dialogue is underway with senior defense officials from across the Asia-Pacific sharing their thoughts and expertise on security matters. And of course, given the venue, it's no surprise that North Korea was a popular talking point. Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
North Korea's balancing act between provocation and intent has never been as apparent as in recent weeks, with rounds of dialogue followed by cross-border shootouts. To better deal with the North Korea threat, senior defense officials and security experts from 24 countries, including the U.S., Japan, China, and Russia, are here in Seoul to take part in the third Seoul Defense Dialogue, hosted by the Ministry of National Defense. The three-day event, which runs through Friday, serves as a venue to enhance military trust and cooperation among nations in the Asia-Pacific, so they can better deal with security issues in the region.
Through earnest discussions between nations, we will try to resolve not only the Asia-Pacific region's conflicts, but also the world's through enhanced cooperation. I'm looking forward to the many key ideas that will be addressed here.
Reunification, military confidence building, and defense cooperation topped Thursday's agenda. Representatives from the United Nations, the European Union, and NATO were also on hand to provide insights.
That no region is alike, no countries are alike, and so what worked in one region may not work in another region. But it doesn't hurt to look at other regions to say what actually did work. Where do we have hotlines? Where do we have advanced notification of maneuvers, for example? That is something that is not endemic to one region, but that's really endemic to something that could be a military cooperation. And that is something that we can learn from each other and that we can copy from each other.
The Seoul Defense Dialogue not only builds trust among countries in the Asia-Pacific region, it also creates consensus on the need for the unification of the Korean Peninsula. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Mark Lippert, Washington's new ambassador to South Korea, arrived in South Korea in Seoul this Thursday to officially take up his new post as the youngest ever U.S. ambassador to the country. Kwon Soo-ah has this report.
Mark Lippert, Washington's newly appointed ambassador to South Korea, is now in Korea and held his first press briefing upon arrival Thursday evening.
안녕하십니까 여러분. Mark Lippert입니다. 반갑습니다. 주한 미국 대사로 한국에서 일하게 되어서 아주 기쁩니다.
Speaking to reporters, he called the U.S.-South Korea relationship a very special one based on common values and interests. The 41-year-old and youngest ever U.S. ambassador to Seoul was nominated in May and confirmed last month to replace Sung Kim, whose 3-year term ended this year. At the age of 32, Lippert became the foreign policy advisor to then-Senator Barack Obama and is considered to be one of President Obama's closest aides. Lippert's last post was Chief of Staff to Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel. Lippert is expected to focus on bolstering trilateral cooperation between the U.S., Korea, and Japan. Pentagon officials said he believes that security cooperation and historical disputes should be approached separately. Lippert is scheduled to begin his first official workday by presenting his credentials to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Friday and meeting with Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
The inter-Korean high-level talks slated for today never materialized, and it's called into question North Korea's sincerity towards dialogue. But as our Hwang Sung-hee tells us, there is still hope the two Koreas will talk things out before the end of the year.
The much-anticipated high-level talks did not happen Thursday, and instead the two Koreas remained wide apart. Both sides had agreed to hold the meeting sometime between late October and early November, upon a surprise visit to the South by a high-level North Korean delegation earlier this month. Despite the latest overtures, experts say the trip was Pyongyang's extension of an olive branch.
From North Korea's stance, the three officials were dispatched with the aim of improving inter-Korean ties and at the same time ensuring that the relationship is led by North Korea.
North Korea says it will not show up to the talks unless South Korea bans activists from launching anti-Pyongyang leaflets across the border. South Korea says it has no legal grounds to ban the activities of civic groups.
While prospects for the second round of high-level talks remain cloudy, experts say that North Korea will not walk away completely.
This as Pyongyang needs Seoul to end its international isolation and prop up its crippled economy. Trips around the globe by senior North Korean officials, including Foreign Minister Lee Soo-young's rare attendance at the United Nations General Assembly, had all proven unsuccessful.
Solve it. So they have only South Korea. That's a gateway for North Korea to get out of that. And also, maybe they have opened up the certain special economic zones. Maybe they want the South Korea's investment. So that's.
While the tug of war between the two Koreas is not expected to end anytime soon, most experts say both parties will want to talk things out within this year. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
A young Army conscript has been sentenced to 45 years behind bars for bullying a junior-ranking soldier to death back in April. A Korean military court says the Army sergeant bears responsibility for the death of his 23-year-old comrade who was killed by repeated blows to the chest. The court's ruling, however, is far more lenient than what Army prosecutors were seeking, which was the death penalty. 5 other soldiers who took part in the bullying were also sentenced to prison, with 3 of them receiving between 25 to 30 years.
An American nurse who treated Ebola patients in West Africa is challenging the U.S. state of Maine after being forced into quarantine against her will.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, this healthcare worker, Casey Hickox, has taken her fight to the national stage. What's her next move?
Well, Hickox has now given the state a firm ultimatum: lift her mandatory quarantine by the end of Thursday, or else she will disregard the restrictions and take the issue to court. The 33-year-old nurse, though testing negative for the Ebola virus, was placed in isolation upon her return from Sierra Leone, a move that she claims is a violation of her civil liberties. Police and state officials have been dispatched to ensure she complies, setting the stage for a potential showdown.
It is not my intention to put anyone at risk in this community. We have been in negotiations all day with the state of Maine and tried to resolve this amicably, but they will not allow me to leave my house and have any interaction with the public, even though I am completely healthy and symptom-free.
At the White House, President Obama had sharply criticized the strict quarantine policies and travel bans that some states have imposed due to the Ebola scare. And rescue operations have resumed following a deadly landslide that tore through a tea plantation in central Sri Lanka. Search efforts intensified Thursday morning with hundreds of military troops and civilians digging through the debris. The country's disaster management minister said more than 100 people are believed to have been buried alive, while other figures have put the total as high as 500. Local reports say an area of about 3 kilometers was affected by the landslide, destroying some 150 homes. And a new report says the number of billionaires worldwide has more than doubled in the wake of the global financial crisis 6 years ago. The report released on Wednesday by Oxfam recorded over 1,600 billionaires at the start of this year, amid a widening divide between the rich and poor. The charity group called on governments to take action to reverse the trend by closing tax loopholes, raising minimum wages, as well as providing free education and health care. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome. I'm Stephen Che with a look at Thursday's sports. We start across the Pacific in the United States, where the San Francisco Giants defeated the Kansas City Royals to take home the World Series crown. The Giants' Michael Morse drove in 2 key runs in the 3-2 win, the second of which ended up being the winner. Now it's their 3rd Commissioner's Trophy in 5 years, cementing their legacy this decade. Now, pitching was great on both sides, but the Giants had the best individual pitcher, Madison Bumgarner. He threw 5 innings of relief for the Game 7 save, capping off the historic postseason run, being named the World Series MVP. And more baseball, this time to the KBO playoff here in Korea. It was Game 3 between the Nexen Heroes and the LG Twins. The series was tied 1-1 going into it. Starting the crucial game was Oh Jae-young for Nexen and Corey Riordan for LG. Now second inning, Nexen's Kang Jung-ho smacks the solo homer for the first score. Then 4 more come in the 5th as it started by Lee Seung-yeol's double. Now in the bottom of the frame, LG gets on board when Chung Sung-hoon drives in the run and both add a single run in the 8th. But in the end, Nexen goes on to take it 6-2 for the 2-1 series lead. And moving on to the KBL, it was in action on Thursday with a doubleheader. First, the Anyang KGC taking on the Goyang Orions. Now the home team surges to the lead as Oh Se-gun and Park Jan-hee get hot, but the number 1 Orions climb back by the 4th. However, KGC takes control, handing the Orions their first loss of the season, 68-59. Meanwhile, the Dongbu Promi take down the ET Land Elephants by 10 points as Do Kyung-min explodes for 20 on the night. And off to the V-League on this Thursday, it also had 2 games. First to the ladies as the GS Caltex Kicks faced off against the Hyundai ENC Hill State. Now Pyeong Seung-ju helps GS Caltex to the early lead, but the relentless attack by Hyundai ENC's Polina Rahimova drives the comeback, and Hyundai holds on to win 3-2. And over in Asan, the Hanse starts strong, but the Vic Storm answer with timely attacking and blocking. Again, it goes the distance, but Mitar Zurich powers the Vic Storm in the 5-set victory. And that does it for me. Your weather's up next. Have a great night.
Hello and happy Thursday. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with weather updates. Today was a rather cloudy day due to a low pressure trough approaching from China, and currently showers are falling over in Jeju, which will gradually spread nationwide. So those of you in both Jeollado provinces and Jeju can expect about 20 to 60 millimeters, and 10 to 40 is expected for Seoul as well as both Chungcheong provinces. A heads up for those of you down south, as rain will be accompanied by stormy conditions. Other than that, tomorrow's morning low should be a couple of degrees higher than the seasonal average. Now, there's some unwelcomed news for baseball fans as heavy autumn rain will last through this Sunday. On to Friday's readings. Seoul and Busan reach 18, Daegu peaks at 15, Gwangju makes it to 17. On to other regions, Jeju peaks at 21, Dokdo hits 18, Mount Kumgang 11. That's all the updates I have for you now. I'll be back with more after midnight. See you soon.
Thanks, Bo-kyung, and that's Primetime News for this Thursday. I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Kang Tae-ri. Have a great evening, everyone. We'll see you soon.